Hello and welcome to this video about one device that I got some weeks ago from one Australian designer, engineer, inventor, Eric Fu. And here is the device that I got from him, and that's called AYO Respirator, and the company is Aim Well. So maybe I can put website name and so on so that you can find them. But the device here is actually the respirator. Looks like this, and what it does have, it has here parts which allows to do some measurements during breathing exercises, so breathing in normal conditions. So if I put here, maybe I can put just a couple of models to show you. So that would be a part which has actually a lot of electronics, and I'm going to explain how it works maybe shortly. Just a second, give me a little bit of time. So if I have this device and I can do similar thing on the opposite side, so the device would look like, have here another part like this, and what you can do, you can pair this electronic model. There are electronic models in both parts with your cell phone, and then what you do next, you can attach it to your body, and so when you start breathing here on your cell phone, you would be able to see the graph which showing airflow for your inhalation and exhalation actually in real time. So, and the device provides like extremely valuable data. So it shows, let me think first what I think respiratory frequency at the very top, then minute volume or volume ventilation, so how much air we require in 1 minute. And later would be tidal volume, which is measured with each breath, so you basically see with each breath how much is your tidal volume. And later would be some other parameters such as the length of inspiration, the length of expiration, and both pauses after inhale and after exhale, they are all given as like in seconds. So that's what device calculates, and that's I found just like being extremely useful information for breathing retraining. And I can explain here how it would work, be it for example for Buteyko practitioners, for students, or for DIY learning students. There are many kind of cases when this device would be extremely useful to quantify breathing retraining. So one of them would be, of course, like I use myself, let's say, another device which is called capnometer. It was years ago, and I use it. It's like you get this capnogram, but then you realize that, for example, if a person breathing with chest, the capnogram has a spike, and end-tidal CO2 actually does not reflect the real alveolar CO2 level, does not reflect the CO2 level in the body as well. So therefore, it's kind of not so useful because of the information that it provides does not actually has very good correlation, and in certain ranges when people switch chest to diaphragm and back, different types of breathing, it actually could provide a misleading data, which I already wrote in the past about. Now, this device is entirely different because it again measures, for example, minute ventilation, tidal volume in real time, and that allows us to use it again like in many different situations. I already kind of thought myself and suggested to Eric like all these type of situations when this device can be used for breathing retraining in particular. So let us, for example, start with thinking about the CP test. Because CP test, even though like for experienced people, for experienced students, is very simple and easy thing, for somebody who starts breathing retraining, I know that most people, we would probably making many mistakes. Probably most people would make a mistake when we do the CP test first time. We do the test. Some very few students may even like cheat later. We may have take deep breath before doing the CP test, for example, or we overdo the test. But in all these situations, actually, this device is able to track these abnormal kind of manipulations of breath really easily. Why? For example, if a person takes big breath, we are supposed to exhale when starting the CP test. So if we take deep, big breath, you immediately see on the graph that actually the graph goes up, and so we start breath holding, would be a horizontal line later, again on your cell phone, showing that we started the breath holding at the increased level of volume in the lungs, meaning that we took inhalation before the test. Or I described another kind of way how people can manipulate and get better results for the CP test is we do the test, let's say 2, 3, 5 seconds, we get a better number, maybe to impress themselves, to impress the teachers or other people. And this device would easily notice this as well, because you can see the graph, how it would look like, the pattern, the chart before the test, and then you can easily compare it just on your cell phone how it looks like after the test. So therefore, you see the device allows kind of easily to see if students measure the CP test correctly. So that's one advantage. Now that probably would be relatively small in comparison with another huge kind of benefit of this device, which can be discovered if we think about how people practice, for example, reduced breathing. So when new students start to learn reduced breathing, and we show on the diagram, like that's how I believe Dr. Buteyko taught it during probably last decade of his teaching, that when people have certain breathing pattern, and I often show it on diagram, you can see in many of my videos this diagram, what we do for reduced breathing, we reduce our ventilation or the tidal volume by about 5-10% to get light air hunger. And this is the initial stage of learning. The most important, again, single breathing exercise in the Buteyko method is shallow breathing, or so-called reduced breathing. So how we can quantify, how we can measure that we reduce the breath by about 5-10%? Well, with this device it's actually extremely easy, because it gives you exact numbers, how much is minute ventilation and how much is tidal volume. Kind of a bit tricky thing, because it would be variable from a person, but what is the purpose, main kind of goal of reduced breathing exercise? We reduce our breath, and that means we reduce our ventilation by about 5-10%, and that creates light level of air hunger. So the device is able to track this very, very well. And my impression was that all these kind of key numbers that I already mentioned, which device can measure, is respiratory frequency or breathing rate, minute ventilation, and tidal volume, are measured with extremely high accuracy. I don't know exact numbers, but we would be probably at the range of, maybe the mistake could be, I don't know, 1-2%, probably like very, very small. You would not, like tiny changes in your breath, it would pick up immediately these variations in the breath. And therefore, again, in this type of situation, as let's say if we want to quantify or measure reduced breathing, this device is extremely valuable. Now, also at later stages, because normally students, when they progress with their breathing retraining, they learn how to practice reduced breathing with moderate level of air hunger. And usually I would say, I say to my students that, okay, we now reduce our breath by about 20-30%. Again, 20-30%, I can put it on a chart, on a graph, and this is what I do when I, for example, teach a class. But this device allows us to measure this exactly, so 20-30%. And I believe that would be numbers which you would get with the device as well if you start measuring sessions with your moderate level of air hunger. And finally, when students go to very strong level of air hunger, then you would reduce your breath probably by about 40-50%. So then people get, again, when we reduce your breath nearly 2 times, we get very strong level of air hunger, and that's of course something for advanced students already. And the device again can easily measure these changes in breathing, being an extremely useful tool for breathing retraining. Plus, of course, maybe when people practice meditation or do some other activities, this device can be also used. In addition to that, it has a chance, you can hear there is a kind of switch which allows to change the resistance, and therefore you can also have similar effects when you practice, let's say, with different resistive devices. particularly again having resistance on inhalation, and this is what it is designed for, to create different levels of resistance by changing, by again moving with switch here. So therefore, I would say that, to my knowledge, there is no better device currently to measure how people practice Buteyko breathing exercise, how we practice reduced breathing in particular, and how we do CP test than this device, because that's just a kind of fantastic addition to breathing retraining and to the Buteyko method. And so I'm really grateful to Eric Fu, again a person from Australia, who sent me this device, and I believe it will take its place in breathing retraining so that people can kind of quantify and analyze the results of their breathing using this kind of scientific instrument, scientific tool, which is again, like these two models, we are full of electronics. We not only measure, I was surprised, I was looking at the type of information I get. We can also provide information about humidity of air. We provide information about air temperature. And you can measure also different parameters which are extremely useful for people with asthma. So airflow and various expiratory velocity flow factors related to, again, presence of asthma, degree of inflammation in the airways could be measured using this device as well. So yeah, that's just again like extremely good addition to breathing retraining and useful tool to quantify breathing retraining and do some other again tests related to Buteyko method and retraining of our breath.